Hickory Lake was a showcase for some of the rising stars in pro fishing. Greg Hackney, Dave Lefebvre, plus famous veterans. Rick Clunn, Dion Hibden. These guys can all fish. And they're with Larry Nixon next on FLW Outdoors.
Yes, sir. That's what we're looking for, my friend. Ball game, baby. Yeah.
He could have one more in. Here does. We have a champion.
Yeah. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? Hallelujah!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to FLW Outdoors. We come to you from Gallatin, Tennessee, and we have just crowned a champion on this stage. On the third stop of the FLW Tour, Larry Nixon joins us. And Larry, Old Hickory can fish tough, but you anglers always figure it out.
Well, there's a bunch of good fishermen in this tour, and they had a really good tournament. I mean, they caught some good quality fish, and they caught them different ways, and, really it was a great tournament.
We're making adjustments, one of the keys that you had to do to win.
Yes, it was because the river was actually bringing clear water down. They were letting so much water out up above, and it was changing the water fluctuations, and the guys that really stayed with the water that had little vertical banks and deeper channels running close to them, they're the ones that scored.
You're going to talk to three of these pros. What kind of things do you want to learn?
Well, mainly I want to learn how they caught them because I had such a bad tournament here. I want to know exactly what they was throwing and how they was fishing these little key areas, and if they was using more than one bait.
And making adjustments, always part of it.
That's right, making adjustments. And I watched them this morning, and they was working hard at it, and they didn't get frustrated when they didn't catch any fish because they knew that sooner or later things would happen, and they did it.
Larry Nixon asks the probing questions coming up. First, a look back at Old Hickory, the third stop on the FLW Tour 2004. Back to FLW Outdoors. We come to you from Gallatin, Tennessee. We have just crowned a champion, Dion Hibden, in second place. Dion, good job today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun today. I was tickled. Things came together today.
Great tournament. I ran into you during practice up there in one of my favorite little sloughs, and we talked about what we thought was going on, about how tough it was and whether you really thought a guy could catch a bunch of fish, and I thought it was tough. Now, there were so many boats up there I couldn't practice, but, boy, you sure figured it out.
Well, it was tough. I mean, that's the thing. All week long, I kind of junk fished for the most part. I could catch a few on a jig and a few on a crankbait, but they changed every day. I mean, this was a real triumph for me to catch them this week. So it was a treat for me to catch them.
Now, these little areas you fish, now, I know from watching the video and watching some of the guys, most of the stuff they fished had little deep water sections that kind of run along the shore. There was a little bit of water there. It wasn't really flat water, what we'd call spawning water. It's more pre-spawn stuff. Now, how did you decide which lure to use and which kind of water?
Well, I think these fish were staging, basically, is what they were doing, and except when some of these bays are so flat, a lot of them are so flat, they stage on a log or on a tree, the end of a tree. I caught multiple fish off a lot of different single objects, and I think because there wasn't a point there close or a secondary point, they were actually staging on an object.
They'd actually use it and kind of hover off the end of it, and you had to trigger them into biting.
They were out in front of that stuff so bad, but the water came up a little bit one day, and the actual second day of the tournament, I caught them dead on the bank, but they were always in those little deep areas in the creek.
Right, had that good deep water access.
You had to have the deep water there.
Well, Larry, second place, still a good payday. Dion, $35,000. Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
Great tournament, man.
Thank you.
Your second place finisher, Stover, Missouri, Dion Hibden. Now, some of the drama from Old Hickory. Let's watch. Easing into the final day on Old Hickory with a lead of more than 6 pounds, Kellogg's pro Dave Lefebvre is quietly confident. And surprisingly, so is Yamaha pro Greg Hackney. He sits in 10th place after an unproductive day 3. But what gives him confidence is what he did the day before. His 26.5 pounds in qualifying stands as the event's biggest sack and served notice of what can happen in just one day. As Greg gets set for what he hopes is a big comeback, Hackney shows why he's considered one of the true students of the sport. And a single question, what's your plan today, brings him to life.
Well, the thing about it is, like yesterday, I'm fishing, I fished reverse yesterday from the way I should have fished. I knew going out high, how I really needed to fish, but, I'm big fish oriented and always have been, and when I get on them big ones, I can't hardly do anything else. I've always been that way, You know, and I trained myself a long time ago to fish one-day tournaments. You know, you go for the win on one day, so, and it's taken me, I'm kind of a slow learner. You know, this is my 4th year doing this, and I've been in that same position. Really, every time I've made a cut, I've been in the position that I was in. You know, I've caught a great big bag and really figured those big fish out for a day. You know, and they've changed, and I haven't been able to adjust with them, but today, with the weather conditions like they are, they're working back to exactly the way they were when I caught that big bag. So now, again, I've caught myself second guessing myself. I'm still going to start with the original game plan that I was planning on going out with this morning. And I'm going, hopefully they'll tell me. I'm going to actually do the same thing I done the second day. I'm going to kind of follow my same tracks. And when I get to a certain area, if I get bit the way I got bit the second day, I'll go back and do that again. If not, I'm going with the original game plan. But I'm just going, this morning, I'm going to do just like I did the second day. I'm not on anything. I'm going out there to figure out what they want. Let them tell me. You know, I'm not going to, yesterday I tried to force feed them the way I wanted to fish. You know, and they didn't want to do that. You know, and that's what happens. And so today I'm going to try to be a little more versatile. And I noticed yesterday when I had those crankbait bites, my bait wasn't exactly right. They were hitting it, but you know, they weren't taking it. So I've downed on it. I have, because that's what I'm going to start doing this morning, is cranking. And I've downsized my bait a little bit. Same profile, just a little smaller and a tighter action. And more, I'm getting away from the chartreuse. I thought yesterday the water had finally cleared up a little bit, and they seem to be more shad oriented. You know, and that big stringer fish I caught were feeding on brim. My partner caught 2 brim out of the pocket with those big fish. My jig looked like it was brim pattern. My crankbait was brim pattern. You know, but it seemed like when the sun's out there, more shad oriented. You know, so just gonna kind of fill it out. And but again, we brought the big stick. We're gonna swing for the fence.
That's a lot of confidence for the 10th place angler, but Hackney knows what Old Hickory can produce, and he knows he's capable of a big move.
Because I'm not scared. That's one thing I'm not.
Coming up, Lefebvre assesses his chances of getting his first FLW win. Japan's Morizo Shimizu makes his presence known.
Yeah!
And Hackney works his plan when FLW Outdoors continues from Gallatin, Tennessee. Welcome back to FLW Outdoors from Gallatin, Tennessee. Taylor Carr with Larry Nixon. Larry, the fishing was difficult, but still some anglers caught fish. On day 1, Marcel Veenstra had over 23 pounds. What does that say to you?
Well, it tells me that he had a giant bag of fish, you know, and he don't have to do too good on day 2 to make that cut. So he was feeling good after day 1.
When you heard that weight and also Greg Hackney's 26 pounds in the second day, did it let you know anything about the fishery?
Well, it just let me know that Old Hickory is fine and dandy and it's full of big fish.
Yes, it is. And Marcel Veenstra fished well. He made the finals. Let's look now at day 4 with Marcel Veenstra.
I don't feel stressed at all. A little 10-boat club tournament today. Just got to catch a lot of fish today, that's all. Yesterday, the water temperature was warming up, and if the sun comes out for a while today or stays out for a while today and it warms up in the shallows, you never know what could pull up in an area that, you know, has produced big, you know, the biggest stringer of day 1, the biggest stringer of day 2. If they're going to pull up anywhere, that, you know, that would be one of the areas. When we get up around the bend here, there's going to be an area that has a little bit more warmer water, so I'm hoping that I can get a big bite early, maybe just something to put a little pressure on Dave. Yes! That's a way to go. Let's start off the day good. That's the way to start the day off. Here's a good one, start off the day, get on the right track. Right now I'm throwing a 1/2 ounce blue chrome rattle trap. Guess that's no secret to anybody in bass fishing, but it's just the best, you know, the best choice for what I'm doing. Fishing this shallow, a lot of times I like to throw a 1/4 ounce. The 1/2 ounce seems to be making more of a disturbance in making more contact with the bottom. I think that gets them stirred up a little bit more. That fish got me pumped up. That's a good way to start today. Big fish, big fish. Stay on there, baby. Please, Lord. Please, Lord. Baby. That's what it's all about, baby. If I can get a couple more bites like that one, I can put a little pressure on Davey. There's what we're looking for. These are the ones we're looking for right here. This gets your heart pumping. Let's go. Got to keep it moving. We're on pace. We're on pace for pressure. I think I got to stick by this stuff here. They're so lethargic the way they bite. My fan club came, showed up, all of a sudden, boom, there they go. I don't think I would do anything differently, but I am curious to know if I would have just, thrown the jig at some of the wood a little bit more often, if that would have triggered a few more bigger bites, maybe. I'm not sure. I've been trying to figure this out for about the last 7, 8, 9, 10 days, and if it were that easy and you could look back all the time, you'd be a lot better fisherman, but it's not. So I got to, take what was given to me, and I felt like I did, as the best that I could. So I had a good time out here. It was a great time.
Now, up next on the show, we're going to meet Greg Hackney. Larry, I know you think Greg Hackney has lots of fishing talent.
Let me tell you, them Louisiana boys, they know how to bass fish. And Greg Hackney has impressed me for about 3 years now. And every tournament he catches fish, and I'm just impressed with him.
And he is originally from Arkansas. We'll meet Greg Hackney next when FLW Outdoors returns. We're back in Gallatin, Tennessee, and Larry Nixon, the man on your left, on day 2 of this tournament was the most popular guy around because Greg Hackney weighed 26 pounds of fish. And Greg, you finished in the top 10. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, he did. He caught a whopping sack of bass. I was with him just a little bit today while he was reorganizing and getting ready to make a move. And I know the fish didn't bite for him real early because he didn't have any bass at that time, but you really made a good comeback. You caught 4 bass, and I guess you probably had great hopes of catching another big giant sack to win this thing.
Yeah, really. I covered a lot of water today and finally found me 4. It wasn't an easy day for me. I kept looking for new water, trying to find another big sack.
When you caught that real big sack of fish on day 2, I know you caught them on a jig, and you caught them on in that little old short weedy grass that was growing on them points and them flats. Would you tell me just a little bit how you was fishing it? Was you swimming it or fishing the bottom, or?
Well, actually, those fish were suspended under that stuff where it was a little thicker and blown up. Some of it was still rooted and some of it had unrooted. And actually, the patches that had unrooted were the best, where it had blown up and made a mat. And I think those fish just pulled up and hung out in that cold weather right under there.
They was going in under there probably to get it just warmer weather or just get under that cover.
Right, and that dead grass, was a little warmer than green grass anyway, so that was the best cover in the area. There was no wood.
Now, what color jig was you fishing?
It was it's a green and orange and another green type of, it's a brim pattern.
A brim pattern.
The water had cleared up. I found those fish on black and blue, and they wouldn't bite it the first day of the tournament.
Wow. You were smart enough to switch colors, and that you felt like that really made a difference in them biting.
Well, I lost 2 there the first day, and neither one of them bit really good, and so I went back second day with a different color, and they were eating.
I'm going to tell you what, that's a pretty smart bass fisherman right there. I'm going to tell you what, I'm impressed. All right. I told you I was impressed with him a long time ago.
Well, Greg's known as an excellent shallow water fisherman. Is that your favorite style, Greg?
Yeah, it really is. I like stuff that's thick, so thick you can't hardly get a bait through it. That's the way I like to fish.
Greg, you take home 4th place and $16,000. Your first top 10. Great job. Congratulations.
It won't be his last.
No doubt. Greg Hackney, Gonzales, Louisiana. Right now, some more drama from Old Hickory. Greg Hackney's plan to repeat his Day 2 stringer is in place. What he didn't talk about was his intention to stay away from one of his spots early in the day, an area that tournament leader Dave Lefebvre was also fishing.
These guys are not just good fishermen, but true gentlemen. You know, he told me last night that I could have that area, and you know, it's just unbelievable that somebody in that position, you know, he's still got a chance to win. He could pull out a bag like he caught on the second day and pull it out, and for him to do that, I really appreciate it.
5th place angler Marcel Veenstra told Lefebvre the same thing. Gestures of true sportsmanship in the midst of intense competition.
Well, we're off. So last day of the tournament, I think I'm going to go out and pretend like I'm 15 pounds down, like I'm pulling out all the stocks today. Don't want to be too comfortable, you know. I think they're going to bite today. I'm a little bit excited, if you can't tell. But 6-pound lead, that's pretty good. So I'm starting the day off with a kicker, so to speak. So we're out of here.
His intention is to expand that 6-pound lead quickly, so he runs about 8 miles upriver, where he'd caught his biggest fish the day before. His target, an isolated beaver hut.
There's definitely a fish on that hut right now. There's no question about it. Whether he'll bite or not, it's a different story. But
Veenstra's plan is to throw a rattle trap that contacts the bottom. 25 minutes after launch, he boats the day's first keeper.
Yes. Good. That's the way to start the day off. Here's a good one. Start off the day. Get on the right track.
It's 8 a.m. Lefebvre is throwing a crankbait to boat docks and still looking for his first fish. A stick not visible the day before tells him the water is falling.
got one.
The 2.5-pounder expands his lead to almost 9 pounds.
Feels good to get one in there. That first fish of the day, I mean, this is the deal, you know. This is a new crank. I broke my other crankbait, broke my old crankbait. Now I'm throwing a different one, and this fish says so much. I mean, it tells me that there's still fish here to be caught. It tells me they're gonna bite my new crankbait. I mean, boy, what an important fish this is.
By the end of the hour, Lefebvre has 2 more nice keepers and a growing lead. He's going to be hard to catch. Hackney is not on the Day 4 leaderboard yet, but he's following his plan and feeling confident. And fishing nearby, Morizo Shimizu puts down his jig and picks up a crankbait. The former Japanese Angler of the Year is about to find one of the day's biggest fish.
Yep. I got it. Big fish. Please. Please. Oh, big fish. Please. Got it! Yeah!
In any language, that means big fish. And that too. Shimizu is about to make a big move up the leaderboard. And so is Dion Hibden. And Greg Hackney sees his strategy pay off as they all chase Dave Lefebvre when FLW Outdoors continues. Coming up next in the show, a guy who knows a thing or two about crankbaits. Rick Clunn talks about one of his favorite techniques.
Yeah, and I think Greg was using one of his crankbaits in this tournament.
Yeah, I was, and I've always considered him the master of crankbait fishing.
All right, Rick Clunn on crankbaiting. We'll also meet our winner, Dave Lefebvre, when FLW Outdoors continues. And welcome back to Gallatin, Tennessee and FLW Outdoors. They're wrapping up on stage now. We've crowned a winner here. It's Dave Lefebvre. We'll meet him shortly. Let's talk about proficiencies. And Larry, you're known as one of the best worm fishermen in the world. Rick Clunn is a crankbait man. He knows the crankbait.
Let me tell you, Rick Clunn never gets tired when he's cranking. That's what makes him so good. He just throws a crankbait from daylight till dark until he figures out the one that fishes right for that event.
We went to Rick Clunn's home in Ava, Missouri and got him to talk about crankbaiting. Here you go. Watch Rick Clunn and learn. Few, if any, anglers understand fish like Rick Clunn. 30-plus years as a pro, over $3 million in earnings, and every title in the sport speaks to that. and skill with crankbaits is a big part of Clunn's success.
When you go to buy a crankbait, your attention to detail needs to be as good as the fish. Otherwise, you don't even understand what you're buying. What is the most important sense in a fish? Most people don't even know this. It's a lateral line. Because the lateral line is essentially a physical ability of the fish to draw a very exact mental image. It has two senses that does that, vision and the lateral line. And what is important to know is that it actually draws the exact image of that. It can detect the difference between a smooth-sided bait and a bait that has these grooves in it. Why is that important? Because more and more pressure we put on the fish as anglers, and we're doing that, the more and more you better understand differences in baits and the differences those fish are detecting. I've already told you things about crankbaits that most people don't even understand. They just go in, they look at it, they like the color of it, they throw it out there and they reel it in. But more and more important again, the difference will make the difference. I'm very aware of what my competitors are doing on the water, and I'm usually trying to create something different than that. That's why the difference is important to me. The other mechanical things about a crankbait I look at is the bill. The bill really creates the second most important thing as far as generating a strike, and that is deflection. A round bill has no deflection points. It basically hits something and slides around it, so the deflection is very minimal. A coffin bill, which has 4 corners, a square bill has 2 corners. When they hit something, those corners kind of cause an edge that actually catches for a second, and then the tension of your line pops the bait off. So you create what I call a more intense deflection. That is what probably will generate the second most important thing that will generate strikes that your crankbait can do for you.
The most important feature, the motion or wobble of the crankbait. Clunn usually prefers his own Thunder Shad balsa wood baits, but he says store-bought lures can be effective too if you follow a few rules.
It doesn't matter what it says on the box, you need to see how they run. You need to see, first of all, tune them, make sure they're running straight. I want it running straight because that gives me control.
Tuning is simple. If the bait's veering left, bend the eye ever so slightly to the right and the other way around.
Then I want to know what depth that bait's running. In other words, and the pull needs to be fairly long because it needs to replicate the length of your average cast. So, because that's what determines your depth, is the length of your cast.
So watch your crankbaits closely. Use a pool if you can and learn exactly how deep they run.
Not only is this a good fish catcher, crankbaits are great fish catchers, but they're a great tool to learn the bottom. Everybody thinks, well, your depth finder is what you learn the bottom with. Well, that depth finder's got a very small cone angle. With this is my depth finder. I can throw it out there 30 feet, 40 feet, all the way around the boat and learn the bottom.
Rick Clunn and his amazing crankbaits. Coming soon to another FLW Top 10 near you. Larry, one thing about Rick Clunn, whenever he talks about anything to do with fishing, people listen.
Well, you better listen to Rick Clunn. Let me tell you, you don't win 4 Bassmasters Classic without knowing what you're doing.
No, you don't. Also, Dave Lefebvre, a guy you want to listen to as well. He won this event. We'll find out how he did it, and he's a hot young angler, Larry.
He really is. I was impressed with the boy today. Now, I'm going to tell you what, he can cast a lure with either hand with good accuracy.
Coming up, the man who conquered Old Hickory, Dave Lefebvre on FLW Outdoors. And welcome back to FLW Outdoors. Taylor Carr with Larry Nixon and our newest champion, Dave Lefebvre. And Larry, he won by almost 9 pounds. Your first win, Dave. Congratulations.
He really did. I'm going to tell you what, he kicked the rears this week, Dave. You did a great job. I was on you early this morning, and you didn't catch any fish when I was around you, but I pretty much know how you caught your fish. Now, would you tell me just a little bit how quick you caught a bass after I left?
Yeah, you were idling out. You just got done bragging about how, everybody I come interview catches a big one, and I'm like, okay. But anyway, you got tired of watching me cast, and you were pulling out, and you got about maybe 100 yards away. There was a no-wake zone, and I whacked the first one, and then you got up on plane, and I whacked another one on like almost 2 consecutive
Dang,
casts.
I can't believe I did
well,
that.
That's some bad planning, Larry.
Yeah, it was pretty fast actually when they started. I had 4 fish in about a matter of a half hour.
Man, that's good. Now that little crankbait you was throwing, it was a little square bill, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a little homemade bait. It's called a laser bait out of Ohio, and it's a wide wobbling bait, kind of like a 1-, only it dives a little bit deeper, about 2.5 feet.
Now they've got 2 of them. They got a flat side, and they got a kind of a round-sided one.
Right, I was throwing both. I had 3 crankbaits on hand at all times. The Lure Jensen Radar 10, which was my deeper one, and then the flat-sided one's about 4 to 5 feet, and then the wide wobbling one was about 2 to 2.5 feet. All the same color.
You're an awesome caster, you know.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to tell you what, I've been fishing a long time. These young guys got me.
How critical is that to what you do, Dave?
You know, when I was younger, I always wanted to trick cast. I met a kid, I can't remember his name now, but Tim Lucas, I think, a guy that used to trick cast and everything. And I got excited about it, you know, watching him do the around the ear and underneath, and you know, knocking cigarettes ashes out of people's. So I kind of got into that when I was younger a little bit, and you know, it's maybe paying off a little bit. I can pretty much put the bait where you have to, and that's important.
You had a huge lead starting today. Did that affect the way you fished today at all?
Absolutely not. I mean, I was more nervous this morning than I've been, and you know, it's basically because a lot of people have been saying good job, you know, you're going to win and all this, and it wasn't over yet by no means. I mean, I was 1 bite ahead.
Well, the second-year pro from Erie, Pennsylvania gets his first win, and Larry, I guarantee, not his last.
No, it's not going to be his last. I've fished around him before, and I've watched him before, and he's a good fisherman, and he's confident.
Dave Lefebvre, good job.
Thank you.
Great
Thanks
tournament,
a lot,
Dave.
guys.
All right, back to the drama now. Let's see how Dave Lefebvre did it on day 4 on Old Hickory. Kellogg's pro Dave Lefebvre is still out in front by a lot, and he's starting to attract a crowd. Back at the banana boat, Marcel Veenstra's rattle trap produces a 4-pounder, and suddenly he's in second place.
Woo! Baby. That's what it's all about, baby.
Marcel doesn't know that Lefebvre has almost 7 pounds in his boat.
Let's go. Got to keep it moving. We're on pace. We're on pace for pressure.
Well, it's nice to dream, and as much as we'd like to say, stick around for the exciting conclusion. This one's in the bag for Lefebvre. It's now a battle for second place. Veenstra has only 1 more keeper, ends up slipping to 5th. Morizo Shimizu adds 2 more nice fish and briefly climbs to 2nd, but he ends the day short of a limit and falls to 3rd. Yeah. Keep an eye on that brush pile. Greg Hackney's on the other end of that line, putting together the kind of run he knew he was capable of.
Oh yeah, I'm pumped. I'm thinking I'm fixing to pop me a... Right there.
He flips his way to an 11-pound day and jumps all the way from 10th to 4th place. Dion Hibden ends up with the day's biggest catch, his last 2 fish coming in the final hour on a crankbait.
There he is. It's a big one, boys. That's another big one.
Hibden's 13-15 moves him from 4th to 2nd place.
He's 14.5 inches long. Look at that fish.
But from beginning to end, the tournament belongs to Lefebvre. He wins at crankbaiting, and his last catch illustrates his determination. After 10 casts to the same spot, he hooks a 4-pounder, giving him 12.5 for the day, 27.5 pounds for the finals.
Look at that stud. Oh boy, I'll tell you, that's exciting right there.
His winning margin would be 9 pounds. And even with the rest of the field so far behind him, Lefebvre couldn't quite make himself believe what was about to happen.
I've never, ever felt like this before.
In only his 2nd year on the FLW Tour, Dave Lefebvre is about to become a winner.
It's been fun, though.
Dave Lefebvre just won this event. He's whining about not being picked for a hook set award in a previous tournament. He just won $100,000. I can't believe that.
Yeah, but that was a $1,000 Walmart gift card.
Let's see your hook set. Let's see it.
My hook set, it wasn't about, my hook set.
Sell it to me.
It's so powerful that I broke the rod, for crying out loud. A guy gets up there and he's like, "Who's your daddy?" And he wins. Look, I'm getting penalized. I'm getting penalized for acting like a professional when I catch a fish.
Dave Lefebvre on the hook set controversy. Coming up, our hook set nominees for Old Hickory and an Ask a Pro question for Wesley Strader.
Very applicable for this tournament. Keith Thompson of Lubbock, Texas writes, when should you fish creeks and when should you concentrate on the main channel? Well, Keith, your answer comes from Fuji Pro Wesley Strader.
Keith, the general rule of thumb is early in the spring and the beginning of fall through the beginning of winter is usually a great time to fish the creeks because in the springtime, as you know, the fish, they'll be spawning and a lot of your fish will pull off the main channel into the creek to find a safe spawning place, you know, where there's out of the current, and it's not going to mess their beds up too bad. Woo! In reversal in the fall, what happens is a lot of your shad and stuff migrate in the creeks and the bass just fall. And what they're doing is they're getting stocked up for the winter time. And that's how they get their food supplies, their fat storages up where they can make it through the winter and go right through the cycle again and get back into the spring.